What if I told you that every time you said it wasn't meant to be, you gave away a piece of your power? That every moment you've chalked up to fate might have been a call to action you didn't answer? We've all done it. We've said things like, if it's meant to happen, it will, or I guess the universe had other plans. But what if those were not signs from the cosmos? What if they were signs of resignation? Right now, I want you to imagine this. You're standing in a storm. Thunder crashes above, wind howls around you, rain lashes your skin. You're cold, afraid, and stuck. You look up at the sky, not for shelter, but for a sign. What should I do? And then silence. No answer, no voice, just you. This is the moment philosophers have debated for centuries. Is there fate? Is there free will? And perhaps more urgently, if no one's coming to save me, what can I do about it? That's what this video is about. Not waiting, not hoping, but owning. It's about how to stop relying on fate and start taking control. Now, let me make something clear. I'm not here to destroy mystery. I'm here to reclaim agency. Because here's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. Believing in fate can feel safe. It gives us an exit. It lets us say, it wasn't my fault, it just wasn't meant to be. But what if that's a lie we tell ourselves to avoid the pain of responsibility? What if fate is just another word for fear? Let's go deeper. Imagine you're watching a cat.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
It pauses at the door, ears twitching, tail frozen. It senses something, a storm, a predator, a shift in the air. It doesn't call it fate. It trusts its instincts. It acts. But we intellectualize, we delay, we wait, we pray for a sign from the universe when the sign was our own discomfort screaming at us to move. So, here's the first deep question I want to ask you, and don't answer it too quickly. Where in your life are you waiting for fate to face what you're afraid to face? Is it the relationship you know is dying? The job you complain about but won't leave? The dream you keep saying, maybe someday too? Here's the philosophical bombshell. Fate is not a force. It's a framework, a story, a myth we use to make sense of life's chaos. But stories can become cages, and cages, no matter how beautiful, are still prisons. Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living," but I'd take it further, the unlived life is not worth examining. And when we rely on fate, we stop living. We become spectators of our own story. We wait for the plot twist instead of writing the next page. Now, I get it. Fate feels romantic. It feels cosmic. It feels safe. But safety isn't the same as freedom. And if you want to grow, you have to risk leaving the comfort of maybe it'll work out and step into the fire of I'll make it work. Let me show you how. Step 1. Recognize the illusion. Every time you say, "It wasn't meant to be," pause. Ask yourself, am I avoiding action by outsourcing my power to fate? Step 2. Replace fate with feedback. Life isn't trying to punish you, it's trying to teach you. That rejection, feedback. That failure, feedback. That delay, feedback. What matters is, what will you do with it? Step 3. Reclaim authorship. You are not a character in someone else's novel. You are the author. The page is blank, the ink is yours, and every time you say "I choose," You break the chains of fate. But here's where it gets even deeper. Some people say, but what about destiny? What about purpose? And here's my answer. Destiny isn't what happens to you. It's what happens through you. It's not a script you follow. It's a force you activate. And how do you activate it? Not by waiting, not by hoping, by choosing. Let me ask you a question that might change everything. If you knew no one was coming to rescue you, what would you do differently today? Would you finally start that project? Would you stop texting the person who never shows up? Would you book the ticket, make the call, take the leap? Because here's the truth no one wants to hear. The moment you stop waiting for fate is the moment you step into power. And power doesn't feel like magic. It feels like responsibility. It feels like waking up and saying, this is my life. No one's coming, so I'm going to build it, breath by breath. Now let's go even deeper, because there's a part of you right now that still wants to believe in fate. That still wants to believe that if you just wait long enough, things will align. But alignment doesn't happen through passivity, it happens through movement. The universe doesn't respond to your wishes, it responds to your willingness. So here's a challenge. Instead of asking, is this meant to be? Ask, what am I willing to make happen? And suddenly everything shifts. You stop looking for signs and start becoming one. You stop chasing purpose and start creating it. You stop fearing failure and start using it. That's how you take control. By realizing that fate is not a map, it's a mirror. It reflects what you believe, what you tolerate, what you repeat. And if you want a new reflection, you have to choose a new pattern. Let's bring this down to something practical. If you're watching this right now, I want you to do something radical. I want you to write down one part of your life where you've been waiting. Just one. Now ask, what would it look like if I took full responsibility for this? Not blame, not guilt, responsibility. There's a difference. Blame asks, whose fault is this? Responsibility asks, what can I do now? And when you live from that place, when you take radical ownership of your time, your energy, your decisions, you stop being a victim of fate and start becoming a force of nature. You stop drifting, you start directing. And that's not just philosophy, it's freedom. But let me warn you, freedom is scary. Because once you realize you're in control, you lose the luxury of excuses. You no longer get to say, life didn't let me. You have to say, I didn't choose to. That's hard, but it's honest. And honesty is the beginning of all transformation. So here's the final idea I want to leave you with in this part of the journey. You were not born to be passive. You were not born to be a puppet. You were born to participate in your own becoming. And if you let go of fate, if you stop waiting, if you stop hoping for signs and start honoring your soul's fire, you'll realize something breathtaking. You don't need fate to find you. You need courage to create yourself. In the next part, we'll go even deeper into the psychology of action, how your mind tricks you into waiting, how fear masquerades as destiny, and how to break free from the subconscious loops that keep you stuck. This is where we dismantle the mental architecture of the waiting game and replace it with a system of deliberate becoming. Let me ask you something you've probably never said out loud. How much of your life has been shaped by fear wearing the mask of fate? Think about it. How many times have you said, it wasn't meant to be, when you were actually just terrified? terrified of failing, terrified of being seen trying and still not succeeding, terrified of the silence after giving your all. This is where the mind plays its most dangerous trick. Fear doesn't always show up with a scream. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it sounds like logic. Sometimes it sounds like fate. I guess it just wasn't the right time. I'm waiting for the universe to give me a sign. I'll act when I feel ready. But readiness is a lie. The universe doesn't owe you a signal, and the right time, it doesn't come. You create it. Here's the brutal truth. The longer you wait for fate, the more you train your brain to retreat from responsibility. You start building neural loops of hesitation, procrastination, and helplessness. Every time you delay action, you reinforce the belief, I'm not the one in control, and eventually, you stop showing up altogether. That's why people with the most potential often do the least with it, because they confuse potential with destiny. But potential means nothing without action. You can be a genius, you can have talent, you can have a soul on fire, but if you wait for fate to validate it, it will turn to ash. So, how do we break these loops? First, we have to understand them. Your brain is wired for survival, not fulfillment. It craves certainty, routine, and minimal risk. That's why it loves the idea of fate, because fate doesn't require effort, it requires surrender. But surrender without action is not peace, it's paralysis. Let me give you a metaphor. Imagine you're in a room. It's dark. You don't know where the door is. You could sit there and say, if I'm meant to leave, the door will open, or you could get up, feel the walls, knock things over, bruise your shins, stumble, and eventually find the handle. That's action. That's agency. That's what taking control looks like. You don't wait for the light. You become the light. Here's a deep question to sit with. What if the sign you've been waiting for is the discomfort you've been avoiding? Because that discomfort, that anxiety, that fear, that tightness in your chest when you think about making a change is not a warning that you're on the wrong path. It's a signal that you're approaching the edge of your current identity. And identities don't die quietly. They fight, they rationalize, they pretend to be fate, but they're just fear in costume. So, how do we disarm these mental loops? Step 1. Catch the language of fate. When you hear yourself saying, meant to be, not the right time, I'll wait and see, interrupt it. Ask, is this fate speaking, or is it fear disguised as philosophy? Step 2. Replace cosmic waiting with micro-action. You don't need to leap off a cliff, just take the next step. Send the email, make the call, write the first page. Action creates clarity, waiting breeds confusion. Step 3. Redefine failure. One of the biggest reasons we hide behind fate is that we're terrified of failing. But Jung said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. That means failure isn't the opposite of progress, it is progress. Every bruise is a breadcrumb, every misstep is a message. Step 4. Build rituals of responsibility. Stop relying on motivation. Create daily anchors, journaling, meditating, planning, reviewing. These aren't just habits, they're structures that break the spell of fate and rewire the brain for conscious choice. Here's something wild. Neuroscience now confirms what ancient philosophers intuited. Your brain changes based on what you repeat. Every time you take decisive action, even if it's small, You strengthen the neural pathways of agency. You teach your mind, I am the cause, not the consequence. And something else happens too. You stop looking for magic and you start becoming magic. People begin to notice. You walk differently. You speak with more weight. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're no longer outsourcing your life to a cosmic lottery. You've become the architect. And when you take that role seriously, life stops feeling random. Patterns emerge. Not because fate is real, but because clarity is cumulative. The more you act, the more you learn. The more you learn, the more you see. The more you see, the more you create. And suddenly the world bends. Not because it's magical, but because you are. Here's a raw truth. No one is coming to give you permission. Not fate, not the universe, not your parents, not your past. The only one who can liberate you is you. So let me ask you the real question beneath all of this. What would happen if you fully accepted that your life is 100% your responsibility, not 80%, not except for what happened to me, not after I heal, right now, today? Because when you accept that, everything changes. You stop waiting for the right mood to create. You stop waiting for the right person to love. You stop waiting for the right conditions to begin, and you begin, you act, you risk, you become. That's not just motivational fluff, that's spiritual ownership. And something mystical happens when you walk that path. You realize that what you called fate was often just the cumulative result of unconscious choices, and what you thought was luck was really the reward of persistence, awareness, and courage. The illusion shatters, and in its place is something more powerful than fate ever offered: freedom. Not the freedom to avoid pain, the freedom to choose what that pain means. Not the freedom to control outcomes, the freedom to respond with integrity no matter the outcome. That's what it means to take control, not to dominate life, but to dance with it, with eyes open, feet grounded, heart awake, and in that dance you'll find something that fate could never give you: dignity, because you didn't wait, you moved, and even if you fall, even if you fail, even if you lose, you did so standing tall, because you chose, and that choice is everything. In the final part of this journey, we're going to explore the ultimate philosophical showdown. Can we create meaning without fate? We'll dive into existentialism, the power of narrative, and how to build a life so rich in purpose that you no longer need to believe in fate, because you've become the author of your own myth. This is where the journey ends, not in certainty, but in creative courage. What if your life was a myth in the making, a living story waiting for its next chapter to be written, not discovered? What if the meaning you've been looking for doesn't exist out there in the stars, but in here, in your own hands, your own words, your own choices? This is where we arrive at the deepest layer of our journey, the philosophical core. Not just how to stop relying on fate, and not just how to take action, but how to create meaning without fate. How to live a life that feels whole even when there's no cosmic script to follow. Because let's be honest, fate is seductive. It comforts us in times of doubt. It gives us a sense that things happen for a reason, that there's a pattern we're just too small to see. And when things go wrong, fate becomes the perfect excuse. It was meant to happen. It's part of the plan. But what if there is no plan? What if the universe is not a story but a blank page? What if meaning isn't something we find? What if meaning is something we write? This idea terrified philosophers for centuries. Nietzsche called it the death of God, the collapse of the old story that said everything happens for a divine reason. Sartre took it further. Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself. That means we're radically free, but also radically responsible. And that freedom, it's heavy. Because when there's no fate, no ultimate meaning, no cosmic plan, then the meaning of your life is entirely up to you. No more excuses, no more waiting, just you, the page, and the pen. Let me ask you something that might shake you to your core. If no one was watching, if there was no reward, no punishment, no cosmic scoreboard, what kind of life would you create? That's what it means to be the author, to choose your values, to define your priorities, to shape your story, not by what happens to you, but by how you respond, what you learn and what you build from the pieces. And the beauty of it, you're not limited by your past. You're not imprisoned by your old chapters. You can rewrite yourself right now, right here. Every day is a fresh page. Every moment is a blank line. But here's the catch. Most people don't want to write. They want to be written. They want a story told about them, not a story by them. Because authorship demands consciousness, and consciousness requires effort. It's easy to say it happened for a reason. It's harder to say, I will give this pain a reason. It's easy to believe the universe has a plan. It's harder to ask, what plan will I make today? But if you want a meaningful life, not just a safe one, you have to take that leap. You have to look at your story so far and ask, what is the deeper theme I want to live by? Is it courage? Is it love? Is it truth? Is it creation? Because when you choose your theme, you begin to align your actions with it. And slowly, your life becomes a story, not of fate, but of purposeful movement. Let's get practical. If you want to stop relying on fate and start taking control, start with these 3 words. I create meaning. Say them out loud. Write them on your mirror. Tattoo them on your habits. Because that's what separates the passive from the powerful. The passive search for meaning, the powerful create it. And you don't need to be a philosopher to do it. You just need to care deeply about the life you're crafting. Let me tell you something bizarre, something few people realize. When you stop relying on fate, your relationships change drastically, because suddenly you're no longer waiting for the one. You become someone worth being with. You stop looking for someone to complete your story and instead look for someone who's writing their own. Your work changes too. You stop asking what job is meant for me and start asking, what can I build that expresses who I am? You stop dreading Monday mornings, you start designing them, and your suffering changes. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what meaning can I give this pain? That's what Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and existential psychologist, taught the world. He said, life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. Frankl watched people crumble in Auschwitz and others rise in impossible conditions. The difference? Those who survived often had a purpose beyond fate. They didn't wait for life to happen, they gave life meaning, even in suffering. So what's your Auschwitz? What's the pain you've endured? What's the heartbreak, the failure, the betrayal, the silence? And more importantly, what story will you write from it? Because that's where your power lives. Not in the absence of pain, but in the transformation of it. And that is how you transcend fate. You don't deny life's randomness, you respond to it with authorship. You don't reject mystery, you meet it with meaning. You don't wait for a sign, you become one. For others, for yourself, for the world. So now it's your turn. Write the story, not tomorrow, not when you're ready, now. Start with this. Chapter 1, I stopped waiting. Chapter 2, I took the pen. Chapter 3, I became the author and let the story unfold. Not perfectly, but powerfully, because the truth is, you don't need fate, you need fire. You don't need signs, you need sight. You don't need a plan laid out for you, you need the courage to create one. And in that creation you'll find something fate could never guarantee. Meaning that is yours, not inherited, not assigned, chosen. And that, my friend, is how you stop relying on fate and start taking control.